My name is Chairman Kevin Jensvold. I serve as the tribal chairman for the Yellow Medicine Dakota people. We're recognized United States CFR 25 as the Upper Sioux community, which is directly correlates to this bill that is in front of you today with the Upper Sioux Agency. It is directly attributed to our people and our connection to this land as the original caretakers. I've served as the tribal chairman for the last 18 years. I've been entrusted to be the spokesperson on behalf of our people. It's a difficult day for me, and I apologize for that. Been pulled in a few directions walking in here because this seems to all of a sudden became a controversial request. But I'm not only here on behalf of the 550 tribal members that I represent, but also all of those future generations that depend upon my words today to compel you to move this bill forward on our behalf. And also all of our ancestors that have preceded in this world that's given me the opportunity to live today in the sacred homeland of the Dakota people. Minnesota is a Dakota word. Minnesota means the cloudy water. So this has been our homeland forever. This land where you make your laws, original tribal lands, which were ceded to the United States in called the Pike Treaty of 1801, I believe, maybe 1805. But our creation story starts in a place just a few miles from here called Mendota. We call it Bedadota, where those rivers come together. So we've never came from anywhere other than where we are right now at this moment in time. And we've been here forever. But the genesis of this request comes from a time in 1862 when my mother's people had made an agreement with the United States of America that they would cede 21 million acres of land so that the state of Minnesota would be able to be formed ultimately. The payments to the Dakota people were to be distributed at two places, Lower Sioux Agency and Upper Sioux Agency, where the Yellow Medicine people are from. And I would encourage all of you, if you don't know the history of this state and how it was formed and the history of the Dakota people, to look upon that. It is one of very difficult history, very dark and very painful from our perspective. And again, I encourage you to look upon that, the mistreatment of my mother's people. But the simple truth just sits there. It is what it is, and neither I nor any of you were there at that time, so none of us can be responsible for what occurred. But the Dakota people were treated in a vicious manner. We were at Upper Sioux Agency waiting on the distribution of the annuities and the goods that were promised by the United States that did not come. In the midst of all of that, our people then became decimated by the lack of food, and ultimately, the history shows that starvation occurred right there at that Upper Sioux Agency, waiting for those goods to be delivered. And if you do read the history, those goods were siphoned off by unscrupulous, settlers and agents and whatnot, and they were never even going to be given to the rightful recipients. So I ask you to think of this state park from a different perspective. The DNR is going to say that it's a place of recreation, and I only look at it as a place of desperation and despair. I use the word genocide and I use the word Holocaust because my ancestors died on that land There are 13 known burial sites on that park, known to the United States, and countless others known only to the Dakota people. It is our ancestral homeland. The Yellow Medicine River is on the east side of the boundary, again named after our people, reflection of who we were and where we lived. The western half directly abuts our tribal lands that we have today. There is a highway that runs through that land that was Highway 67. It sloughed off the side of the hill. It is now decommissioned, and it's created the dissection of that park. And that is one of the catalysts for this request, is that park is now cannot be accessed only through tribal lands on the west side, because the bridge on the Yellow Medicine River will be decommissioned at some point in the near future by the Department of Transportation. The significance of that land is not only a place of death and despair of the 1862, but it holds historical significance prior to that. Places of celebration and prayer and courtship and death. All of those places at the confluence of the Minnesota River and the Yellow Medicine River were our places where our people lived for 10,000 years. And that's the reason that Highway 67 could not be relocated. There's just too many traditional sites that would be impacted for them to attempt to relocate the road and to be able to access the eastern campground. And so at some point in the near future, it will be an impossibility. And that is the request I have today on behalf of our people, is that you would make that consideration. In order for them to get there, they have to go through 3 miles of tribal land. And I ask you to only hold one picture, and that if you see a picnic table scattered amongst that park, I ask that you remember those were the same places that my ancestors succumbed to starvation. Different time and a different place, but yet the Creator has brought us here today. And maybe there's a possibility that across these lines and these boundaries that have separated the Dakota people, the original inhabitants and the immigrants, we can't change the past, but maybe there's an opportunity here for us moving forward to say that we did something different from our ancestors that validated all humanity, that made it relevant that we are all created equal under the eyes of God, and however we view that. I ask for your consideration to understand the powerful impact and the solemn respect that we have for the Upper Agency Park. It is not a place for recreation. It is a battlefield. It is a concentration camp. It is a place of death and destruction of my mother's people and the Dakota culture as we knew it at the time. I heard the governor say, that he wants one Minnesota, and I think that if it's going to be one Minnesota, it needs to also include the first Minnesotans. The governor accompanied myself and our tribal council to Washington, D.C. because there's encumbrances on this property. We went to talk to the National Park Service to lend our assistance to the state of Minnesota to get assurities that these encumbrances would be the timelines. I believe there's a 1-year timeline for replacement recreational parklands that they would consider, and there is a letter available that they would be willing to work on that timeline for indeterminate up to 3 years, I believe. So we've helped pave the way to make this happen and make it a reality. I apologize for my disconnect. Like I said, I was confronted outside, and because I understand that there's been some discourse, I want to address one set of testimony that you may be aware of. It comes from the Friends of the Upper Sioux Park, and they do almost bolster our argument that they're taking offense that they are unaware of what has occurred, and that they are concerned that they have places to recreate. And again, the DNR has assured us that they will replace those lands so that the citizens of Minnesota will have that opportunity moving forward. And I think that the Friends of the Park, the gentleman's name is Dave Smigluski. He is the chairman of that foundation, but he is also the mayor of a neighboring town. He was also at one time the editor of the local newspaper. And in his testimony, which I would directly refute, he states he was unaware until just the last year or two that this was potential. I told him 18 years ago of our intent. So I just want to put that out there for the record. And I haven't had the opportunity to challenge him directly, but I want that to be known in this testimony. So I thank you for your time.